My name is Wayne Schilke. I am the Vice President of Innovation and Technical Support with Eagle Flexible Packaging. Joining me this morning is going to be Sarah Martell with the Novia Films. Sarah?
Yes, thank you, Wayne, for the invite. Just a quick background, I've been with Novia Films for, all I'm saying is over 25 years now. Otherwise, it shows my age. And so I'm happy to be here to help Wayne educate everybody about compostable packaging and sustainable solutions.
So what we want to talk about today is just give you a brief explanation of who Eagle is. Sarah will be able to give you an understanding better of who Novia is if you're not familiar with I want to talk about sustainable packaging, what the different material structure and options are for you and how to go about making that selection, how to decide what it is you want to use, and then the sustainable flexible packaging options, the different choices you can make depending upon what's applicable to your project and how sustainable, compostable perhaps you want to be. At the end, we will field questions. So if you have them, please send them off and we'll try to get to as many of them as time will allow. First about Eagle Flexible, we are a printer and converter, and by converter that means laminating, it means making preform pouches, it means adding zipper to roll stock. We are vertically integrated to the point that we don't make our own films. We rely on folks like Novia, but we have a full pre-press department. We're able to make our own plates. We do the printing with predominantly water-based inks with a flex with water-based inks and with solvent-free inks. For the inks and the adhesives, they're both low sustainability of packaging. In addition to the services or the manufacturing processes, we also have what we call Eagle Innovation, whereby we offer to our customers and prospective customers that we will bring our team in and help you identify possible process improvements within your facility. Something that has been beneficial in many cases for our customers, and we look forward in participating in that way. As I said, the products that we provide, preform pouches, addressing most of the styles, types currently looked for in the marketplace, side gusseted quads, flat bottom bags, and die cut shaped pouches. Printed roll fed film is pretty straightforward. It's where we would print and or laminate films, deliver them in roll form to our customers, who then do further processing with them themselves as they're filling. Interlock is kind of a general term we use for pre-applied zippers that we apply to film and then deliver in roll stock form. And that interlock zipper can be truly a front panel applied interlock zipper. It can be a bag top zipper. It can be a pour and lock zipper. If any of those terms are foreign to you, we welcome a phone call or an email question, and we can get those things answered for you. We put together many types of laminated structures. They can be as simple as 2 layers and as extensive as 4, 5, 6 layers. Usually they're including PET or polypropylene or cellulose-based films, could be nylon, can include polyethylene of many different blends, then can also have metallized layers of PET or polypropylene, and they can incorporate foil as well. The markets are varied, pretty much anything that you envision putting into a flexible packaging, or many things that are currently in rigid go into flexible, and we provide film to just about every market. The ones you see here are mostly food or nutritional supplement. We have a fair amount of industrial or commercial. So far, they have not been so inquisitive as regards sustainable films. The definition of sustainable that we'd like to provide today really takes a look at film from a life cycle approach, being that it's looking to take a look at how the raw materials are sourced, if they're grown, how they're grown and harvested, looking to see what effect, hopefully minimal and hopefully not negative or minimally negative on the environment those would have. It's looking to have the energy used minimal, and again, byproducts of that energy being not harmful to humans or to Earth. We're looking for minimal emissions, whether that be VOCs, whether that be something going into water reclamation or into landfills. And then it's also looking at the end of life or possibly reuse to extend that life. Much of sustainable packaging that we're involved with includes reuse, and that is the intent that we have engineered film that allows people to use again and again the packaging that our customer has provided to them. If it then addressing the end of life, what we're looking at there is how kind can we be to the environment when that package gets deposited. Ideally, what we're looking to do as far as the different categories of sustainable packaging, one of the ways that we can be good for the environment is by reducing the material, the weight of the material that is used. We are very in tune with that, something we work on daily with our suppliers to engineer films that allow us to down gauge, thin out materials, and we count on our suppliers to be technologically advanced and have equipment that allows them to do the things that we and our customers are trying to do in regard to the down gauging, the light weighting of materials. Again, I talked about the reuse of material. I talked about the energy recovery. One of the things that we do here is our manufacturing processes develop a good amount of heat as a byproduct. We reuse that heat to further process our materials. For packaging, energy recovery could mean post-consumer that it is then being collected and used to generate energy, generate electricity in a number of different ways. The recycling of films, we work with our customers to identify opportunities to use polypropylene, to use low-density polyethylene, to use high-density polyethylene, so that those things can, if used by themselves in a package, be recycled according to that recycle symbol, whether 5, 4, or 2. And if it happens to be a number 7, which maybe many of you are aware of, is that other, even commingled films that can't be recycled in one of the previously mentioned streams are used for a variety of things, although typically it's more difficult to find use and typically more difficult to get them to that intended recycling stream. One of the things that we really wanted to talk about As what we see is probably the best route to take, if it's possible, is to go for a compostable film. Compostable seems to best address the intent of what people are wanting to do. It has guidelines to it that require certain time frames, which keep them in packaging form a minimal amount of time, and more often are able to actually be a profit gaining venture for the people who are composting them. Our customers more and more, or our potential customers more and more, are looking for a green solution. We have found over the last probably 3 or 4 years where we would get maybe 5 or 6 inquiries a year, and at the beginning, no actual projects, to where we're now getting 5 or 6 inquiries a month and many projects a year, many of them which are turning into commercial ventures. One of the things that we do need to help our customers and our inquiring potential customers be aware of is to avoid the term greenwashing. Greenwashing is, as it says there, it would be the providing of bad information that some people might use to suggest that their package is sustainable, recyclable, compostable in a way that could mislead a buyer, a consumer who might go and buy their packaging with the thought that they are going to be helping the environment. It's important that green claims are backed up. What does happen, we understand, is that if people are skirting that greenwashing line, they will, from their competition perhaps, or from federal agencies, be taken to task for claims that they're making. So we will be able to help customers understand to what extent the packaging that we're discussing with them is compliant for compostable regulations, how it is compliant for recyclability among many different recycling streams, and we'll always recommend that they gain advice from perhaps legal folks to make sure that what they might want to print on their package in regard to those claims is in compliance with the different areas in which they want to sell their product. Different regions of the United States have different regulations based upon what type of recycling programs or composting programs are available. As far as the composting requirements, I'd like Sarah to address that to some degree right now.
Absolutely, and the one great thing is having Eagle Flexible Packaging on, hosting this webinar, is that you have already studied so much of the intricacies with, say, adhesives and inks, etc., so that we're not starting from square one, which is nice. The key thing with any of these certifications is an initial test. You kind of go through a paper exercise to show that you've got compostable materials in, and that you know exactly what's going into your package, and that's one thing that Eagle does. And then you have to go through a disintegration test, which takes 12 weeks. And all that's doing is really making sure that there's more than 90% of the original weight of the pack degrades down to less than 2 millimeters in size. So it's really showing that in a composting type atmosphere, your package is going to break down. Ultimately, the whole thing needs to biodegrade over 90% within 6 months. And one thing that I want to stress is that just because a film or a material is bio-based does not mean that it's actually going to biodegrade in 6 months. You know, you could put a tree or even kind of a large branch in a compost bin for 6 months and it would not necessarily degrade to 90%. So working with companies who have certified materials is very important. Just because it's from a plant doesn't necessarily mean it's going to compost. Once you've gone through the disintegration, then the composting standards are, okay, well, whatever you've made, will it support new life from a seed? And so there's always that kind of component. And then if you look on the slide, you'll see with Vinsot, which is OK Compost, they also in Europe have a home composting. So hopefully you can still hear me. Yeah, there we go. They have a home composting certification, which we don't have in the US. But all that means is that it's been composted at a lower temperature for a longer time period. And the reason that we don't have that in the US is that the US is a bit more litigious, and the certifying bodies are a little bit nervous about certifying something that people make at home in case they mess it up. Industrial composts are all run, according to good standards. And so that's why we have industrial composting certifies.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay. So let me jump in on this about Novia. Novia Films is a global company. We make two main film families. One is a polypropylene based, a very conventional, traditional packaging that goes into labels, overwrap, and coated packaging. But then we also have the cellulosic side, which NatureFlex, as you see on the slide, is our main compostable brand. And it is from trees. I'm just going to put that out first because some people get confused of the different films that are out there. So we are not from corn, we're from trees. And it's a process that has been around for probably about 100 years now. So we're very skilled at making film for packaging applications. The next point on there is from renewable wood pulp. So I just want to take a second on this, because as you're looking at sustainable options, we're always looking obviously at end of life and compostable, but it is important, as Wayne mentioned earlier, to know what other claims you can make or what other sourcing choices you can make. Renewable materials essentially mean that it's made from new carbon, like trees and plants, etc., versus the old carbon, which is oil-based. And so if that's something that you feel is important to your brand and your customer base, then consider renewable materials as well. As you can see, over 90% bio-based carbon content, which means over 90% renewable carbon. And as I mentioned, we've been making these films for a long time. And so where we're focused is shelf life extension, because that's part of your sustainability journey. If you can avoid food waste, that's a more sustainable business for everybody. And we do naturally have a high barrier to oxygen, to moisture, and to mineral oils. Mineral oils is possibly not on radar right now, but it will be. It's big in Europe, and it's basically mineral oils coming from recycled board through the inner liner of a bag-in-box into children's cereals and things like that. So any questions, please fire that, and I'd be more than happy to answer at the end. The other thing, when you see the wide heat seal range, that's why it is machine friendly. What you need with any of these sustainable or compostable films is that it's actually going to do what it needs to do, which is make the package. And that's one thing, I know Wayne can attest to, is that, we have coefficient of friction worked out. We've got a good heat seal range if you're using a mono layer, but it's also very printable, adhesive, compatible, etc. for when you're looking at laminations, because not all material structures are going to be a single film. Majority of them, which I'll talk about on the next slide, are going to need multiple solutions or multi layers. Wayne, did you want to jump in on that?
I did. Let me add something as far as the machine friendly. While Novia Films address a great number of the machine requirements, particularly flow wrapped films, it's important that the needs of your machine to produce productively are addressed. Not every film necessarily can be run on existing equipment. For example, you may have vertical packaging equipment, if you're going to be getting roll stock or roll stock with a zipper in it, that requires laminated films. That can limit the number of different options that are available for sustainable. We feel we've got good options for compostable, depending upon the application, by using an Novia film to laminate to a sealant film, where that sealant film by itself may not be machinable on your equipment based upon the way you're sealing and what have you. So it is important to realize that not just any film necessarily that you might want to be considering is going to be machinable. Likely we can find an option, but they may not be as varied, again, depending upon your equipment.
Thank you. The final section on this slide is the disposal end of life. Without going into great detail, you do have a number of things that can be claimed. I would say particularly the top three, whether you're looking at home compostable, industrial compostable, or anaerobic digestion. And what we're seeing now more and more is anaerobic digestion plants are popping up, and very often linked then with industrial compost sites to get the best of both worlds. So again, without going into a lot of detail on this particular webinar, if you want more information about that, please reach out to us and we can talk further. Now, if we move on to the next slide. Right, so how to decide? This is the big question. As you can see, the applications down the left-hand side of the slide mirror very much what Eagle Flexible Packaging specializes in. And some of these applications will fit more in the sustainable mold than others. If you look at, let's say, tea, which would also incorporate coffee, a lot of the companies out there are looking at USDA certified organic, they're looking at fair trade. They're spending a lot of money on the product, and because their consumers care about that. And so if you match the passion for the product with a good sense of responsibility or stewardship for the environment with packaging, that's a very good story to tell. And I would say, if nothing else with sustainability, is think of the story you want to tell first, because it's ultimately the consumers that it means something to. So sustainable versus traditional. Wayne already touched on this. Traditional, you're very often looking at 2-ply or 3-ply laminations. Let's take a dried food example. Very often that could be polyester on the outside, foil on the inside, and a polyethylene on as the sealant. So if you think about it as A, B, C, you've got polyester as A, the appearance, foil as B, the barrier, and your polyethylene as your containment or your sealant layer in the middle. What we have for any application that is out there, there are different options for compostable, including metallized, and which is surprising to many. So within NatureFlex, we have a clear NK range of films. It's stiff, it gives good pack appearance, it's glossy, it's printable. Really, it would look exactly the same as a polyester. As a foil replacement, then you'd be looking at a metallized NatureFlex to give the barrier. And it is certified compostable. It sounds a little strange in your brain, but it is certified compostable. So you can get the barrier of a metal layer without having. As far as the sealants are concerned, Wayne's already touched on this. There are many different types of sealants out there. Everything from thermoplastic starch to polylactic acid, which are more on the, let's say, the bio-based areas, to PBS, which is polybutylene succinate. Don't worry, you don't have to remember all these, or other copolyesters. So they're more oil-based, but they compost. And when you're deciding on particularly what kind of sealant you want, have a think about how to open the package. For instance, let's say a tea sachet. If you open a tea sachet and the sealant kind of stretches and fights you tearing it open, that's possibly not the best sealant you want. So rather than just saying, oh, it has to seal at a certain temperature, at a certain speed, think about all aspects of the package. What does the consumer experience need to be for that package? Dial that in, send it to Wayne, and he can come up with the best solution. So, and that's what I mean by understanding the product specifications. Very often, I would say a package has been over-specified. You're asking for a barrier that you actually don't really need. And you're not asking for things that are important to the consumer. Then when you talk about the project versus the price, a lot of it comes down to talking to Wayne about potential down gauging. Can you go from 3 layers to 2 layers? Can you still go with a compostable option and maintain a relatively equivalent project price? And the final point, conducting material trials. This goes back to what Wayne was saying. These films are not going to be a complete drop-in. They're very, very close, but they're not a complete drop-in. So we always fully recommend full material trials, just to see what might need tweaking here or there. Wayne, is there anything else that you would like me to talk about on this particular slide?
Well, one of the things I did want to add is on a previous slide, nor on this one, do we really have liquids included. And that hasn't so much been an application that we had been looking at, mainly because customers for liquids hadn't come to us. What we are investigating is being able to take a Novia cellulose-based film, a NatureFlex film, for the outside, the print layer, where typically we would, hopefully most of you are familiar with this term, we would reverse print that clear film and then laminate it to something else. We are working to be with one of the leading biofilm companies in Europe to be able to combine the NatureFlex material with a sealant film that can hold with a longer shelf life liquids, either just really high moisture content or maybe just a complete liquid. And it's testing we're doing now, and would certainly welcome any projects to be thrown into that if anybody out there has something. As Sarah was saying, the NatureFlex films we enjoy using. They convert well for us. One of the things that is, as we talk about project versus price, Novia does a really nice job of supporting our needs on a relatively quick turnaround. What we do have, though, is there's a shelf life, as you might expect, a shelf life to compostable materials before they're converted. That means before we've done something. So a raw material to us is what we would have received from Novia. Those films we have to warehouse carefully, and they do have a limited, a relatively limited shelf life as compared to more traditional films. So that's something that we have to keep in mind, particularly when we're pricing a project. Minimums can be normally addressed with our suppliers, but there is a shelf life. Now, once they're converted and they're in your inventory, we would be asking you to care for them in a certain manner, and it's not unreasonable. But the shelf life then, while you inventory preformed pouches or roll stock or whatever that may be, is much more extended than they are for us. And the reason they're limited for us is we need to do certain things with them. They need to be machinable at certain speeds for us, and that can be affected over a relatively short period of time. Once we've combined them with an Novia film, that shelf life, because of their film, helps to extend in your warehouse. So I did want to make that point, or those points. So
can I just jump in on that real quick, Wayne, just to clarify, the film does not compost in a roll form. Some people, when we talk about shelf life and we're talking about compostable film, occasionally people will think, okay, what is it, just disintegrating? But no, our film is essentially a transparent paper. And just as you would, if you left a paper unwrapped, it could dry out or it could absorb moisture. That's very much the same with a cellophane, or a NatureFlex. But as long as you keep it wrapped, it stays in good condition, and it's not like it's disintegrating. It's just a little more difficult to run with age if it's been affected by the atmosphere in any way. So I just wanted to clarify that. Otherwise, in case people had visions of, rolls of film disintegrating on a shelf.
And Sarah, that's a good point, because we do get that question, and we explained that the composting environment, one of the things is an industrial composting environment where it's actively being managed, and bacteria and the necessary environment for everything that's put into there, be it films like ours, be it paper, be it actual green produce scraps are being thrown into it and worked. It's not, like you say, it's not composting on a store shelf. So going to the next slide. So Sarah was able to explain the many of the materials that we would be considering as we're thinking about what you want to package, how, what the product is going to be, what your shelf life is going to be. We have projects that have shelf life as short as, because they're going to be packaging fresh produce, as short as 2 weeks. We have people who are looking for compostable films to be as long as a year, 18 months, 2 years. We need to consider what's going in them, as well as how you're going to be filling. If it's a preformed pouch that may be getting filled semi-automatically, that's one thing. If it's roll stock that you're wanting to run on a vertical bagger at 60 packages a minute, that can be another. So what we're looking to do then is take the parameters of the project and determine, as Sarah said, you have to kind of think about how sustainable you want to be, determine how we can get to your end goal. And as we've talked today, one of the focuses for us is to try to be compostable, because that seems to be the subset of all of this sustainable packaging that is gaining the most guidelines, the most regulation, the most better definition within the sustainable packaging option. It seems also to really address the intent of what we're trying to do. We're looking to get materials, hopefully renewable, that are managed in a crop fashion like trees are for a Novia. They are harvested. They have a life. The countryside is not being ravaged when they're doing that. It gets turned into in a responsible way into the films that we're going to be using. We then, with our low VOC water-based inks and our low VOC adhesives, as opposed to solvent inks or solvent adhesives, we're able to again address emissions and the fact that there are relatively none compared to the solvent options. So we again are not, as we're continuing to add to the materials, we are not doing anything or doing things in as least harmless a way as possible. So adding those then with compostable films is the approach that we quite often try to take. Now, there are solutions short of that to a variety of degrees. Just by using water-based inks and adhesive, we are providing, even if we're using PET and polyethylene, we are providing a more sustainable option than had we been using solvent inks and solvent adhesives. So that's improving the situation. If we're able to print with our inks and adhesives on one layer maybe of the cellophane and one layer of which is renewable, and then maybe for whatever reason needing to add that to a polyethylene, again, that's a more sustainable option because of the renewability of the cellulose-based films. So again, we're looking to address as often as we can compostability, because that then addresses the end of life, we feel, in a more responsible way, especially for the people who more and more are looking to go with something sustainable. Go to the next slide, please. So, just to kind of recap what we talked about, we explained sustainable as, from a life cycle approach, and the many things that includes, where the raw materials are coming from for folks like Novia, and in this case, from trees, renewable, harvested like a crop, using for us, inks and adhesive that are sensitive to the emissions that we're putting off, trying to reuse as much as we can, like we do, the heat that our processes generate for further processing of our films. We're looking to, whenever possible, if we can't come up with a compostable solution, have a recyclable solution. Now, recyclable, and I guess I meant to address this earlier, recyclable as we talked about, you need to get, I hate to say it because Sarah did point out that the U.S. is litigious, but it's probably good to get some legal advice if you do want to put wording on your package that says that it's compostable, says that it's recyclable, because people will start suggesting that that gets into that greenwashing concept where somebody could say that it's recyclable, maybe trying to influence a consumer who feels that, well, if I buy that package and once I've emptied it, I put it in my recycling bin, I'm being sensitive to the environment. Well, if in your area, in your waste management system, if there is not, and I don't mean that from the company, but I mean in the management of your waste system, if there is no way to get that package recycled, it is going to go almost certainly into a landfill and have not done what the consumer thinks it will have done when they did put it in their recycling bin. So that's really important. And that package, if it's compostable, and we touched on this, if it's truly compostable and it goes into a recycled bin because, and that area has no way to take that package and get it into a composting stream, it's going to go into a landfill. And when that compostable package is covered in a landfill, it's going to be there for many, many, many years, most likely, where had it gotten into a composting, an industrial composting setting, it would have decomposed within the 6 months or so that is necessary, maybe even less than that. So again, we're focusing on compostable solutions whenever we can. We will, with you, help to put together, and with our partners like Novia, help to put together the materials that address your product, your packaging methods, to decide what that needs to be, and help you to know how compostable, how recyclable, or to what extent it is sustainable, so you can decide maybe how you can market that. We have, again, many, many different ways we can go, and would really look forward to you bringing to us any applications that you're looking at. We've gotten some questions as we've been talking. We'll try to address as many as we can. Sarah, one of the questions is, and I can do this one, what is the cost difference between compostable and traditional flexible packaging? That's a good one. That difference continues to come down as the critical mass for the compostable films, I can't say is met, but is getting nearer to being met. The costs of those films continue coming down. Typically, a couple years ago, we would have said that a compostable option is probably going to be 3 times or more than a traditional option. That's probably down from under 3 to maybe 2.5 to, and I got to throw out there 3.5, depending upon what the actual application is going to be. It clearly is more expensive in almost every case. But as Sarah pointed out, there are people who we included who are looking to be good stewards with what we've been given to oversee, and for those folks, for us, there is a place.
Wayne, I'd also jump in is that if you're looking at a particular brand, let's say a particular product group, let's take pet food snacks. When you're looking at pouches of those, take a look at the price points of those particular packages, and then when you're considering it, I know it's all going on the bottom line, but think of it as, cents or partial percentage of cents per package. And if it matches and if it aligns with the product, then that is something that is a much easier, let's say, pill to swallow than if you're looking at like a standard, bag of chips that has got no organic claims, no brand behind it that's looking to be sustainable. Whereas you've got, the all natural pet treats, etc. That is something that is more likely to be a good fit with your sustainable options and are at much higher price points.
Thanks, Sarah. Another question is, can this packaging be applied to 190-degree hot fill, low pH, highly acid product? And then what might the shelf life be? That question kind of goes to sounds like liquid. So it goes to our current research that we're doing to see how well we can handle liquids. Hot fill, where we use, typically we're going to use water-based adhesive. Well, water-based adhesive are not usable for hot fill. What we can use is a solvent-free adhesive that is. So that would be a way to address it. What I would have to do is, and I would appreciate that question, or you can see for both Sarah and I, if you're looking at this online, you can see our email addresses. Get in touch with us that way, I guess me at this point, so that we can talk more about your application and get with our supplier of that sealant film. Again, working with the real liquids or nearly liquid products for compostable is kind of in its infancy, but would like to talk to you more about it. Sarah, do you have anything that you'd want to add to that?
Yes, I do. As far as NatureFlex is concerned, it's not a thermoplastic, and so it can definitely deal with hot environments or hot fill. But as Wayne said, there is so much research going on right now in the sealant side. I would say the first generation of sealants were great at what they do, but they didn't cover all of the different packaging types. And as Wayne's saying, they're at the forefront of working with the new developments as they come out. So if there isn't anything right now, I honor is at an end. And I think there's a new one that I know which one Wayne's talking about. I have a lot of hope for that one, that's going to basically fill the gap of sealants that is currently there.
Thanks, Sarah. Another question we have, actually a couple of them on the same thing. Are there minimum material amounts required on compostable films? I know Sarah is going to be able to chime in on this, even though she's not a salesperson, nor am I. But we are working with a Novia and a company called BioBag, which is the company that Sarah and I are referring to in regard to the sealant film that we're addressing the liquid. In both cases, we've got good cooperation in being able to have minimums. Eagle doesn't have a minimum in an order quantity. Now, if you order one or you order 1,000, the total cost is going to be just about the same, because making 1,000 is, depending upon the size of it, is not much more time or material than having had to make that one, because of the setup and everything and the wash up and everything involved. But in regard to minimums, Eagle doesn't have minimums, and for the most part, minimums should be at a minimum, because again of the cooperation we have with our suppliers especially as compostable films are continuing to evolve. Hopefully that answered the question in not a vague way. I would expect minimums now. Hopefully you're looking at something more than 5 or 10. You're looking at thousands. But again, we can provide you with 5 or 10. They would be costly. Sarah, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just lay out what ours is from a manufacturing base, because we slit the film to order, so it's essentially custom sized reels, and I can only tell you kind of like in pounds per inches. But once a project is up and running, we're at about a £500 minimum for a particular size. And if you take our NK, the clear NK film, for instance, you've got 25,100 square inches per pound. But that's when we're in full production modes. I would say we work very closely with Wayne, and so from a trial standpoint, we work single rolls, etc., to kind of get the project up and running and to get it going and through concept to scale up. So in the whole scheme of film manufacturer, £500 is pretty tiny. So I would view that we're fairly flexible in that.
And we are eagle flexible in that. So another question is, what is the lead time for sustainable options? Novia is real quick for us. Their grades of cellulose, the NK, the Nature Flexes, are regularly being produced. So that lead time is going to be very minimal and almost inconsequential. Other sealant films can be a little bit longer, partly because we're getting them currently from Europe, where compostable films are way more advanced. The use of them are way more advanced. We have, at cost, flown films in if that's what's necessary to meet a project's deadline. Typically, for a sealant film, other than if a Novias were being used as a sealant film, it could be, and this is a scary number, but it could be as long as 12 weeks. What we would expect to do is, as a program was up and running, we would be working with the customer and our supplier to have a forecasted understanding of what our needs are going to be, so that we would have material to address lead times better than 12 weeks. But that can be the reality of it nowadays. Trial films we sometimes can get in much more quickly than that, depending upon the volume. Sarah, anything on that?
Nope, I think you answered it very well.
Okay. Another question, and this one I really like, is this technology available in preform pouch or just roll stock? Actually, preform pouch is easier because we don't necessarily have to address the roll stock, whether it's vertical or horizontal form fill seal. We don't so much have to address that packaging equipment's requirement on the film. So yes, it's certainly available even more easily as a preformed pouch, and we'd be very interested in discussing that further. That is the extent of our questions. If somebody had asked earlier if the slides would be available, and yes, they are. So again, get in touch with me at my email address, and we'll make sure that you get a copy of this presentation. We're very grateful I'm grateful for Sarah for having joined us on this, and for Novia to be the partner that they have been as we develop our our sustainable options. Thank everybody who joined us today, and please note again our email addresses and send us off any questions that you may have subsequent to our signing off here. Cheryl?
No, thank you very much for letting me be part of it, and I am very impressed by the number of participants that are interested in sustainable packaging. I truly do believe it's the future.
Thanks again, everybody. Take care. You done?